Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Laura Prada from the Telesur Studios in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with our news, so you stay with us. We begin talking about Bolivia because President Evo Morales called on the opposition to suspend their protests until the election audit is completed.
We're not afraid because we never committed any fraud. But someone has to decide. The opposition now say they don't believe in this audit. Yet they don't present any evidence of fraud. So the audit is beginning today. And it is the duty of all of us, including yourselves from the media, to help to bring peace to the country and to find solutions. And one solution is to clarify whether there was a fraud or not. And the only way to do that, in my opinion, is for these international bodies and governments from the Americas and the world to examine the process. And of course, their conclusions must be respected. And so, as this audit is beginning, I ask those who want to organize strikes and roadblocks to suspend their protests until the delegates from the OAS and the three governments involved in the audit give their final report.
And also in Bolivia, social movements have been marching towards the capital La Paz to defend President Evo Morales' re-election victory. Thousands of miners, campesinos and others headed through the center of the city towards the seat of government, the House of the People, to express their support for the president. The foreign minister called on the main opposition party, citizen community, to join the election audit, which began this Thursday with the participation of the OAS, the Organization of American States. Meanwhile, the Bolivian Communication Minister Manuel Canelas has condemned opposition leaders for constantly changing their positions. The minister was speaking after opposition figure Luis Fernando Camacho's latest remarks calling for another election. Canelas called for the Santa Cruz Civic Committee leader to be more responsible and serious with the political positions he takes, given the tense climate in Bolivia at the moment. And solidarity towards Bolivia keeps coming. From Venezuela, President Nicolás Maduro has congratulated the Bolivian president just re-elected Evo Morales on his victory and rejected the destabilization attempts by the opposition, and he called them a coup attempt. President Maduro was speaking at the first International Congress of Indigenous People that took place in Venezuela in the Bolívar state since last Thursday, the 29th.
Evo Morales has been re-elected by his people for the fourth time. 2 months ago, I called Evo because I saw about a meeting of the oligarchy in Santa Cruz on Telesur, at which they said that if Evo Morales won the elections, they would not recognize his victory. And then, losing candidate Carlos Mesa repeated it. He said on election day that he wouldn't recognize the results, and now they want to destabilize Bolivia. And they are applying the same formula they've applied in Venezuela. And Venezuela, with patience, defending peace, was able to triumph. I'm sure that the people of Bolivia, with Evo Morales, with patience, defending the constitution and peace, will also triumph like Venezuela did. Of that, I'm sure.
President Maduro also said that the indigenous peoples should be the soul of the greatest changes that humanity needs.
The indigenous peoples, the aboriginal peoples, should be the soul of the greatest changes that humanity needs in order to ensure justice, equality, and the natural happiness of the human being. We will achieve it in the 21st century. I have no doubt that we will achieve it.
And now we move on to other topics. We go to Chile, where demonstrations continue to take place despite the intense and excessive repression about which the United Nations Human Rights Delegations remains silent, and they have only met with the government representatives and Also, we must remember that these demonstrations that are taking place in Chile have started just 12 days ago. And from the streets of Santiago de Chile, the capital, our correspondent Paola Dragnik has been there and has been taking testimony of the people that are on the streets. And now we have a report, especially for us, of what happened on this Tuesday, I must say, evening, when she was on the streets and she gathered this information. She sent it to us on a report. Welcome, Paola.
It's harrowing to report this kind of thing. A young girl putting together an installation has been threatened by 3 carabineros who say they were going to rape her. We arrived just at the moment, and having a camera meant that we could prevent this from happening. Unfortunately, there's no evidence beyond her testimony and tears. This is what is happening here. Where are the human rights observers? It's a good question. Evidence? There's none. It's really very difficult. This is the kind of repression that has seen so many people come out onto the streets. How can you hide? Where can you seek help? The Carabineros said it was an unauthorized protest. The Lutherans in charge were in the square. I don't know if we can return to where this occurred to see the installation of photographs of people killed by repression, made with balloons and candles. If we can't, we only have the testimony of Javiera, who generously spoke to us. This is the impossible situation here in Plaza Baquedano in Santiago de Chile.
They start pushing us and keep pushing. They were trying to get me in the van. If they weren't for you and the 2 girls I was, they would have forced me and brought me.
Impressive images of what is happening in Santiago de Chile. Now we move on to other topics, nevertheless strong. We move on to Panama because more protests are taking place there at Panama City after police heavily repressed mobilizations against a proposed reform package. Authorities set up a fence around the National Assembly building in the hopes of stopping protesters from reaching the building. People have been demonstrating against a constitutional reform package that, among others, include amendments to alter the state budget, adjust salaries, and remove autonomy from universities. The National Assembly is set to debate the reform package and could vote on it before going on a break until 2020.
They can't block this area. They are so proud to proclaim that the assembly is the home of the people, but they don't even let us protest. Look at how well guarded the building is, with so many police and even guard dogs, and yet they say that's the home of the people.
They should allow us to go in there, to listen to their debate and everything that this reform implies. But they want to do everything behind our backs, and that's very upsetting.
Like this, we go to a first break here from the south. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at Tolster English and on my account at Laura Peter. So you stay with us. We are back with our news. We go to Colombia, where violence continues in the department of Cauca and shows no signs of abating. 4 people have reportedly been killed in an attack in the town of Corinto. The perpetrators then flee to the mountains surrounding the region. The news comes less than 48 hours after the 4 indigenous guards and an indigenous leader were massacred in the same area the day before. Colombian Senator Roy Barreras said that in Cauca, that Cauca is out of control. And on your screens, you have a tweet made by Edwin Mauricio Capaz Lectano. He says, a new massacre, this time in Corinto, Vereda Santa Elena, have approximately 1 hour ago armed men killed 4 people and run away towards a mountain area on a vehicle that reports to the community. The victims are not indigenous. That's the tweet, and he used the hashtag SOS, and he tagged the human rights from United Nations, the government of Cauca, the indigenous community of Cauca, and also he used the tag for human rights. Incredible, these images of this violence in Colombia. Now we move on to other topics. We go to Ecuador, where the main indigenous organization, CONAIE, has delivered its proposal for a new economic and social model for the country. The proposal was handed to representatives of the United Nations and the Ecuadorian Bishops' Conference, who have been acting as mediators with the government.
I want to repeat that for the blood of our brothers and sisters, we are not going to accept any new decree that resembles Decree 883. We won't accept it, and Ecuador will not accept it. I want to make that very clear.
Hundreds of people have marched in Argentina to oppose payments to the International Monetary Fund. Under a banner reading, "The debt is to the people, not the IMF," the protesters made their way through Buenos Aires to the local offices of the fund. The IMF has said it wants to talk to the president-elect Alberto Fernandez about the future of the $57 billion bailout agreed with the outgoing president Mauricio Macri. But Fernandez says any new arrangements have to protect workers' rights and address the rising level of poverty. We go to the Caribbean. St. Kitts and Nevis Premier Mark Barnsley has slammed the European Union tax haven practice, calling it an attack on the Caribbean nation's independence. The 28-nation group set up the blacklist back in December 2017, which causes reputational damage, stricter controls on transactions with the European Union, and poses a risk to trade and investment.
I sound a warning here today that our hard-won independence is being slowly eroded by new and different efforts at colonial domination. The EU and others must understand that Barbados and the Caribbean do not desire confrontation and acrimony. We require genuine partnership and respect. Belgium and Germany cannot assert their sovereign right to tax their citizens at 40%, while denying Barbados its equally sovereign right to tax its citizens at 10%. It is not enough for powerful nations to say to small nations that our tax policies are harmful to them without showing us how such harm occurs.
Speaking at the ruling Barbados Labour Party annual conference, the Premier also spoke about the illegal sanctions imposed against Venezuela, as he called on international countries to respect the Bolivarian Republic's sovereignty.
We have no doubt where our dear friends, the United States and others, stand on this issue impacting Venezuela. But the CARICOM position, and listen to me carefully, the CARICOM position, championed as it was by Barbados and Mia Mottley, is a position of principle. Venezuela is a sovereign state, and its people and institutions must be allowed to fashion the best solutions for their country peacefully and through dialogue.
And Bahamas is to reintroduce a new tax relief policy for Abaco, the Keys, and Grand Bahama until June 2020. The measure is designed to stimulate the economies of those communities most impacted by Hurricane Dorian. Prime Minister Hubert Minnis has announced that individuals and businesses in these areas will be exempt from paying VAT on a range of items, from water and unprepared foods to clothing and plumbing fixtures. Fuel for generators in communities still without electricity will also be VAT-free. The start date will be announced shortly, and there are also plans to set up a National Recovery and Reconstruction Trust Fund, an independent, non-political body to help fund home and building repairs. And over the next 2 months, Grenada will be working with Jamaica's Tourism Ministry to enhance visitor experience at tourist attractions in the Spice Isle. Tourism in Grenada, main source of foreign exchange, and last year, in 2018, the sector contributed to more than half of the island's GDP. In 2017, the country saw a 30% increase in visitors' arrivals, while it won the title of Best Caribbean Destination for the Caribbean Travel Journal. Grenada's government is striving to provide a top-notch tourism product.
Either a PPP, a public-private partnership, so that means a private investor with, and when I say investor, I'm not talking necessarily of somebody from outside. I think Grenadians can do that easily, can work with government to do something, but it seems as though the private sector does it better, and all of the sites in Jamaica are commercialized. And maybe that's part of the reason they do so very well and they get exceeding numbers. So there's a commitment from the Ministry of Tourism to work with us, and we'll seriously be pursuing some of the ideas that they have, some of the things that have worked with them to make our tourism more resilient, more vibrant.
And St. Lucia's Prime Minister Alan Chastanet has said his administration has made little headway in dealing with the buggery law. Chastanet said he acknowledged that the matter has become a global issue, especially as it relates to human rights violations against a minority group. However, he explained that his government has not taken an official position on the subject, adding that he did not believe tourism would be affected. This as earlier this month, the president of St. Lucia's Hospitality and Tourism Association said that she was saddened over so many LGBTQ travelers refusing to visit St. Lucia because of the ancient law. Time for a second and very short break. Stay tuned with us. We are back with our news. The Ethiopian Prime Minister Press Secretary Bilan Seyum has confirmed the arrest of 409 people during demonstrations into recent ethnic and religious violence in the country. Ethnic tensions between the Ethiopian regions of Ordioma and Ogaden have been intensifying over the past week. The Oromia police chief reported that 67 people have been killed in clashes. The Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed vowed to bring those responsible for the violence to justice. The conflict between the regions has continued despite historical efforts made by Addis Ababa to create unity. And the Pakistani railway minister has said that the number of people confirmed killed in a fire on a train has increased to 74. The blaze was apparently caused by the explosion of 2 gas cylinders and a stove that were brought on board by passengers, despite the articles being prohibited. 3 whole carriages went up in flames, leaving no one inside them alive. The railways were closed while rescue teams sought to save other passengers. The Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan expressed his condolences to the families of the victims after the incident.
First of all, I would like to commiserate with the families who have families of the victims of the Rahim Yar Khan train tragedy. It's trying to imagine what they must be going through right now. We just pray for them. May the Almighty Allah give them strength to bear this loss.
And in Lebanon, hundreds continue to march through the streets of Beirut, the capital, demanding an end to corruption and economic reforms. Marchers chanting revolution have kept up their action even after the Prime Minister Saad Hariri bowed to public pressure and resigned this week. Demonstrators are now demanding a complete transformation of the political system away from corrupt and sectarian interests before a new government is installed.
Now we are marching in this protest to say all of them means all of them, all of the corrupt ones, and they know themselves very well. We have started from the Central Bank of Lebanon, and now we are heading up to the square to say that all of Lebanon is united.
Our demand is that we need a smaller government of specialists, so that there won't be corruption like before, and most importantly, there should be a Minister of Justice, honorable and honest, because our judiciary system is the one that can bring those who put the country in a state of terror to justice.
And we move on now to Iraq, where a network of rights defenders and doctors have taken on the dangerous job of counting the dead as bloody anti-government protests continue in Iraq. The Iraqi Human Rights Commission places the number at more than 40, while the government has stopped releasing figures on the number of protest-related deaths since the strike started on October 1st. And now we move on to other topics. The United States House of Representatives voted 332 to 196 to pass a resolution to lay out the ground rules for the impeachment inquiry into President Donald Trump. Its focus is on a more public phase rather than on deciding whether to impeach the president or not. It also sets out the rights Trump's lawyers would have. This is the first formal test of support for the inquiry in the Democratic-controlled House. The president, who calls the inquiry a witch hunt, is accused of trying to use Ukraine to investigate corruption claims against his political rival Joe Biden and his son. And United Kingdom, on the day Britain was supposed to leave the European Union, the opposition Labour Party leader Jeremy Corbyn launched his election campaign apart from promising to get Brexit sorted within 6 months. Corbyn is also going to fight a corrupt system and to clamp down on a privileged elite of tax evaders.
We are going after the tax dodgers. We're going after the dodgy landlords. We're going after the bad bosses. We're going after the big polluters, because we know whose side we, the Labour Party, are on.
And Britain's Labour leader has also voted to protect United Kingdom's health service, the NHS, from privatisation. This after reports that leaders Boris Johnson and Donald Trump are plotting to sell off the NHS to United States pharmaceutical companies in a post-Brexit trade deal.
Despite his denials, the NHS is up for grabs by US corporations in a one-sided Trump trade sellout. Channel 4 dispatches revealed this week that the cost of drugs and medicines has repeatedly been discussed between the US and British trade officials. Remember Johnson's famous promise of $350 million a week for the NHS? Well, his toxic Brexit trade deal with Trump could hand over $500 million a week of NHS money to big drug corporations in America and around the world. We will stop them. Labour won't let Donald Trump get his hands on our National Health Service.
With this information, we come to the end of News Brief. Remember, you can find this and much more other information on our website, FlutterEnglish.net, where you can read opinion articles, watch special interviews, and of course, do follow-ups on the latest information happening in Latin America, the Caribbean, and the rest of the world. So you continue with us with Telesur, always together, connecting our global south. Until next time, thank you for watching.